Black explorers arrive on an uncharted coast. They name the discovery Babakiueria, a place inhabited by a native white population who shelter around primitive open fires, attempting to cook meat with crude implements. The explorers look upon these white natives with a paternalistic eye. They see a simple, developing people who, with enough government intervention, might one day take an interest in the modern world around them. For their own good, these native whites are relocated into designated, densely packed concrete ghettos. The state decides that progress requires a more aggressive approach. White children are taken from their families and placed with dominant black households to receive a proper education and assimilate into the ruling culture. When the white population tries to hold their sacred ceremonies, like an Anzac Day march, police arrive in force to shut down the gathering and prevent what the state deems offensive behavior. This inverted history is actually the plot of a 1986 mockumentary called Babakiueria. The film forces the dominant culture to experience the precise, systemic cruelty of colonization by putting them on the receiving end. While the film is fiction, the specific indignities it depicts perfectly mirror the real history of indigenous peoples around the globe. To understand how colonizers justified this massive power imbalance, we have to look at the psychological engine driving their actions, the concept of a worldview. A worldview is an invisible web of habit-forming beliefs. It dictates how a specific culture interprets the present, understands the past, and imagines the future. The devastating legacy of colonization was ultimately a violent collision of two fundamentally incompatible ways of seeing the universe. This map shows the geographical reality of North America prior to European arrival. Indigenous peoples lived across the continent in a complex network of independent nations, complete with distinct languages and governance systems. On the left is the Aboriginal Worldview. These indigenous nations shared a foundational philosophy, a web of life. In this horizontal structure, humans, plants, animals, and natural elements exist in harmony as equal partners. On the right, the European worldview at the time of contact was a strict vertical hierarchy. In this pyramid, humans sit at the absolute apex, positioned to inherently dominate all life forms stacked beneath them. When the vertical pyramid encountered the horizontal web, it introduced a logic of ownership and rank to a landscape built on shared partnership. The internal mechanics of the pyramid required those at the top to dominate whatever sat beneath them. Sociologists define cultural contact as the interaction of two or more independent cultures. However, driven by the logic of the pyramid, European powers turned contact into a system of total subjugation. In North America, this ideology drove the rapid displacement of native groups, leading to tragedies like the destruction of the Beothuk people in Canada. This illustration highlights the scramble for Africa, an era driven by European ambitions to claim ownership of foreign lands and extract wealth for their monarchs. This same pyramid-driven ideology resulted in the paternalistic, destructive assimilation policies inflicted upon Aboriginal Australians. From the coast of North America to the interior of Africa and the Australian outback, a consistent pattern emerged. By viewing different cultures through this hierarchical lens, European powers transformed complex, independent nations into mere obstacles to their own imperial growth. The aftershocks of these conflicting worldviews are actively driving societal friction right now. The modern controversy surrounding January 26th in Australia is a direct, ongoing manifestation of this historical clash. The dominant culture observes this date as Australia Day. It serves as a proud national celebration of European arrival and subsequent societal achievements. Indigenous populations experience the exact same day as Invasion Day or Survival Day. For them, celebrating the arrival of the colonizing culture sits entirely at odds with honoring the survival of the oldest continuous culture on Earth. This single calendar date encapsulates the core tragedy of cultural contact. Two groups looking at the exact same historical event and experiencing entirely opposing realities. True cultural understanding requires the dominant culture to recognize that their default, hierarchical view of the world is not the only valid lens. Explicitly acknowledging the historical damage caused by the pyramid worldview is a mandatory step towards societal healing. Only by respecting and learning from the indigenous web of life can society move past the trauma of colonization and build a genuinely equitable future.